And on that cheery note, let's move on to a good blog post from George Sacroclides from yesterday, The Stupidity of Intelligence. Again and again, the thinkers of our time have been scratching their heads. If we are so intelligent, then why are we destroying our planet? The more the question is left unanswered and the problem unaddressed, the more evidence mounts that the very head we are scratching may not be that intelligent after all. Our problem is our narrow definition of what makes one intelligent. We still think of intelligence in quantitative terms, i.e. the IQ scale, when in fact processing power and level of ability to conduct complex thinking is only one part of what intelligence encompasses. It is much broader and multifaceted. It is about emotional intelligence and the ability to see the big picture. It is about being able to see outside of the mathematical formulas, recognize and understand outliers in the data, and be able to see things from multiple angles, including the future as well as the past. Scientists who study intelligence in other animals have been making the mistake of focusing on measuring how those animals compare to humans, specifically in the type of intelligence that humans have, forgetting that these animals may possess types of intelligence that are actually weak in humans. An excellent point. We train monkeys to press buttons in order to get treats and throw out octopus in a difficult situation to see how long it takes to get out of it. All these comparisons are about problem solving, which is only one type of intelligence, and a dangerous one that is. It is problem solving that led to the invention of the atomic bomb. It is problem solving that helped the Nazis find a solution to the Jewish problem. This problem solving ability broadly continues to dominate our view of what intelligence is, and it stunts other vital forms of intelligence from emerging. Indicative of our dogmatic, narrow definition of intelligence is the fact that we consider compassion, empathy, spirituality as values rather than intelligence. Boom, that is incredibly insightful. Yes, I personally consider compassion, empathy, spirituality. Well, spirituality is a little more of a slippery fish, but compassion and empathy I consider as intelligent, signs of intelligence. We consider them to be optional choices and opinions as opposed to vital compasses that should be as important as the practical, mathematical, and factual dimensions of our basic way of thinking, which forms the dominant bedrock of what we think is called intelligence. However, it is these values that are most needed today in order for us to tackle the existential crisis we face. If they are so important, then surely they should be part of what we call intelligence. To understand how this narrow version of intelligence becomes dominant, one has only to look back to evolution. Evolution focused on reinforcing intelligence traits, which had to do with problem solving, in order for us to survive. On the other hand, intelligence traits that had to do with a social and moral code, with considering the benefit of the group versus the benefit of the individual, and understanding our responsibility towards the natural environment, were traits that stood no chance. They had little evolutionary advantage and were simply left behind, languishing as secondary traits that only a minority of the genetic pool possessed. Oh, that is incredibly an incredibly good point. I mean, I think people have learned to be individualistic and selfish, and that seems to only be ramping up more in our society. So that intelligence or that compassionate meme, if you will, starts to become something that is secondary, and also just isn't actually something that people carry out in their daily lives as an action. It's only signaled to, right? Like the idea of virtue signaling, right? Like people really love to talk about the good things that they do or want to do, or the good things that they feel towards other people, but in actuality they don't actually operate in their own lives in a way that is consistent with somebody who cares about how other people feel. You understand what I'm saying? Anyways, I went off a little there. As a result, we became a species that on one hand may be incredibly able to overcome obstacles, but without any consideration to fellow humans as well as our natural environment. In fact, I have just defined capitalism. Capitalism has helped us become who we are as a species, and it had a good run. However, we are now faced with the problem of climate change and ecological and social collapse, which requires us to use another type of intelligence, one that we never fully developed. This planet is asking us to use a type of brain that we never had to use as our default brain, because we never had to worry about natural resources running out. We never had to worry about overpopulation. We never had to worry about our children asking us why we brought them into a condemned world. We never had to worry about running out of forests to cut, running out of land to cultivate, running out of earth to exploit. There is a commonality among all these questions. They are all questions that have to do with things running out, something that our brain was never built for. Rather than thinking about degrowth, we envisage ambitious Green New Deals to save the planet, because this is the only way our brain can think. It was not built to consider questions about our existential future. It was not built to feel sorry for others and ensure that they get equal income, ensure that they get ICU beds in the middle of a pandemic. Our brain was primarily built to exploit, whether it is resources or other humans. It's not because we are evil. It is because our brain evolved in a period of unlimited abundance. And also the message, the programming, to be selfish, that that is an actual, not even just a moral value or a standard. It's like a knee-jerk thing that humans do. Well, you just have to survive, and it's all, you have to take care of yourself first. Think about you, then think about others. Our brain was primarily built to exploit, whether it is resources or other humans. It's not because we are evil, it's because our brain evolved. I read that. Only when our civilization grew too big did we realize that we are living in a finite bubble, a glass dome where everything is recycled, even our own shit. We are desperately in need of a brain that we simply did not develop enough. We could say that we are a Kodak, still trying to use film in a world that moved on, that learned to take its own selfies. But we all know what happened to Kodak. Humans version 1.0 may still be roaming the planet, but it is already out of date. Our intelligence technology is obsolete, and our current civilization is finished. Again, always good stuff from George Saccoclides. Let's move on to some extreme weather news. Tropical cyclone Amphan in the Bay of Bengal could become one of the most intense Category 5 on record in the North Indian Ocean. So the tropical storm hurricane cyclone season is ramping up very, very quickly this week. This is from today. Major Indian city, Kolkata, is in its direct path. Amphan is now a Category 5 cyclone in the Bay of Bengal. Beyond exceptional rapid intensification has occurred over the past 24 hours. Amphan has intensified from 65 knots or 75 miles per hour sustained winds to 140 knots or 160 mile per hour winds. This puts Amphan into the list of the most extreme rapid intensifications of tropical systems on Earth. Extreme weather, we have that. Amphan has a central pressure of near 910 bar or millibar as is approaching northeast India. Cyclone is still expected to make landfall near the Bangladesh-India border. Major storm surge, destructive winds, and flooding are likely. And you can see satellite pictures of that here, here, and here. And this has become, this has become a regular thing, a calling card, if you will, or a, what is the word I'm trying to think of? Something that is happening quite often with these storms in the last 5 years, for sure, is how quickly they intensify in the matter of 24 hours, becoming gigantic storms. Amphan has a huge wind radii. 50-knot winds are expanded 100 and 125 miles across all 4 quadrants. Also has 85 miles of wind radii of 64-knot winds, hurricane force. That is a huge area. Not good. Not good for the people of Calcutta and India. Moving on. Troy McDermott says coding for those storms not built for that abuse. Yes. Exactly. The Saffir-Simpson scale needs updating. Many people are saying these storms are going beyond the standard categories. Let's move on to some other climate change news. Double whammy weather. Study identifies increased frequency of connected patterns from drought to heavy rain in regional hotspots across the globe. This is from May 14th. Like an undulating seesaw, weather in some regions swings from drought to heavy rain under the weight of climate-induced changes. According to an analysis published in Geophysical Research Letters, the study finds a link between droughts followed by heavy rain events, along with an increased rate of these extreme weather occurrences. What they're describing is weather whiplash. In areas with vulnerable populations and high poverty rates, these swings are likely to exacerbate conditions. This research could inform more effective climate adaptation planning and policies by identifying where these swings are likely to occur. Extreme dry and wet conditions are increasingly making global headlines. However, existing studies generally treat them in a separate way, said study lead author Zhaogang He, who conducted the work at Princeton University as a PhD student and is now a postdoctoral fellow at Stanford University's Water in the West program. Their consecutive occurrence, especially in the same location within a short period, magnifies impact on local populations and therefore deserves more attention. They found that in the past 7 decades, about 11% of droughts globally have been followed by at least one heavy rain event in the following 3 months in a concentrated area or region, notably the Democratic Republic of Congo, Kenya, Brazil, Canada, Botswana, Iran, China, and Myanmar had an average seesaw occurrence of over 25% during the study period, revealing an ongoing pattern of these linked harsh weather events in certain locations. So weather whiplash taking its toll. The team also identified regional seesaw hotspots, mainly in mid-latitude regions that have experienced an increase in the frequency of droughts, with correlating heavy rains followed during the next season. These hotspots, which include Asia, Southern Africa, and Oceania, have high poverty rates and populations more vulnerable to extreme weather. These extreme events often wreak havoc on agriculture, food and water security, energy production, infrastructure, and ecosystems. Identifying areas likely to have increased frequency of both drought and heavy rains, as well as the swing between the two, is important for disaster preparedness and can help aid organizations prioritize resource allocation such as food, water, shelter, or medical supplies while they last. So, helpful to identify these areas for now. But as climate change increases and the effects of climate change increase, they're not going to be able to cope or keep up with these extreme events, which will eventually lead to a breakdown, whether that's an environmental breakdown or economic breakdown or infrastructure breakdown. But this is an ongoing situation. And lastly in this video, this is from last year, June 9th, 2019. 3 islands disappeared in the past year. Is climate change to blame? Question mark. Well, Magic 8 Ball, what do you got to say? Yeah, so islands disappearing as the water rises. What do you all think? You can put that in the category of really not very bright questions. In October 2018, Hurricane Walaka washed away a remote 11-acre Hawaiian island as the storm barreled through the Pacific Ocean. Several months before that, Russian scientists reported that a small Arctic island had disappeared, saying that only vast open water remained at the site. Holy shnikes. And near the end of 2018, a local newspaper reported that an uninhabited islet or islet off the coast of Japan could no longer be found, presumably because it had sunk beneath the water's surface. Okay. In these recent examples, the islands were small and uninhabited, but scientists say the fate of these tiny pieces of land could be a harbinger of what's to come with some of the small islands. Maybe it's no big deal to the average person because they're uninhabited. But you're going to see the same processes happen on larger islands and populated ones, said Kurt Storlazzi, a geologist at the U.S. Geological Survey's Pacific Coastal and Marine Science Center in Santa Cruz, California. Storlazzi has conducted research on coastal erosion in the tropics. He says that one way rising sea levels can redesign coastlines is by generating bigger waves, adding layers of sediment in some places while causing erosion and flooding in others. If sea levels continue to rise as projected, Storlazzi said there's going to be an even greater change. When? Golly. This, scientific reticence is infuriating sometimes, or all the time. The threat of rising seas. The link between climate change and sea level rise is well understood among scientists. Okay, well understood. So why are you using qualifiers like if? Burning fossil fuels, blah, 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 emits carbon dioxide. Golly gee, we all know that. In 2013, the United Nations released a sweeping report projecting that without major reductions in emissions, sea levels could rise between 1.5 feet and 3 feet by 2100. All right. Was that funny enough for you? Did you all laugh at that? 1.5 feet and 3 feet by 2100. That would be awesome if that's all they did. But again, who knows? Nobody can see the future. We don't know. Even without sinking whole islands, the amount of sea level rise is enough to engulf most coastlines, potentially displacing millions of people. Extreme weather's knockout blow. Another force reshaping islands is extreme weather. That's what happened in Hawaii when the Category 5 hurricane Walaka wiped out tiny uninhabited East Island. Studies have shown that climate change could make storms more intense, particularly in the Caribbean and the Western Pacific. Already happening. It's already happening. As we've seen in earlier and earlier hurricane season and cyclone season happen. In a situation where the climate is not changing and sea levels are not rising, what has normally happened in these islands would eventually reform after the storm passes. In a changing climate, particularly one where the sea level is rising, I think intense storms of that kind will be a bigger knockout blow. Sea level rise and king tides are affecting the Hawaiian Islands very severely. Very severely. Even with ample evidence of how the planet's climate has changed since the Industrial Revolution, many scientists are cautious about drawing direct links between disappearing islands and climate change. All right, well, that caution is not helpful at the moment. But, do what you got to do, guys. You're probably never going to be able to prove definitively that climate change was responsible for a particular phenomenon, none says, but at the same time, the evidence is just so overwhelming. So, okay. Overwhelming evidence is not enough to actually prove a correlation or a link. Alrighty then. None has spent more than 30 years studying countries in the Western and South Pacific, including Micronesia and the Solomon Islands, where sea levels are rising the fastest, whereas seas are rising an average of 3.2 millimeters per year globally. Parts of the Western Pacific are seeing an average jump of 8 to 12 millimeters per year, driven by wind patterns that are moving more water to the region. That makes islands in this part of the world especially vulnerable. For now, sea levels are rising along every coast, and in some places it's rising much faster. Current rates of sea level rise are expected to continue for at least 100 years. Really? So, with an exponential rise in temperatures predicted and ice melt, you're going to say the rates are going to continue to rise. Oh, current rates. I get it. Okay. That was me. My bad. The rates are expected to rise. I don't know if they're expected to continue at the same rate. That's the point I was trying to make. Hopefully you understood that. Who believes in climate change? I don't know. Whack jobs. Why do you feel so shitty? You're trying to figure it out, Sandy. Are you sick? I mean, there's already king tides taking out, threatening to take out cities in Florida, taking out roads in Hawaii. They're already a thing that is already happening. Hey guys, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. You can also support the channel at the links below: PayPal, Square, and Patreon. Also, all of my live streams are available for listening on Patreon if you happen to miss them during the day. So you can sign up for my Patreon for as little as $1. If you want to go check out the live streams, they are all there. Thanks a lot.